Mrs. Alden, you are being charged with the unlawful retention of minors over a period of 15 years. That sentence rang in my ears like a death toll. I was 67 years old, standing in a courtroom while my daughter Madeline sat just a few feet away, back straight, lips painted, wearing the same polished look she'd worn the day she left her children on my doorstep and disappeared without warning. Now she was back. Not to apologize, not to reconnect, but to sue me for kidnapping. Let me take you back. It started with a knock on the door. It was 6:42 in the morning, and I remember that detail clearly because I had just taken the cinnamon rolls out of the oven, the same ones Oliver, the youngest, loved so much. I opened the door to find Madeline, my only child, standing there with dark circles under her eyes, holding a duffel bag in one hand and her 3 toddlers in the other. "Just for a few days, Mom," she said. "I need to think. I'm overwhelmed. Please." No kiss, no explanation. She was gone by the time I got them breakfast. Those few days turned into months, then years. There were no phone calls, no birthdays, no Christmas cards. She visited exactly twice, once to ask for money, once more to say she was almost ready to take them back. She never came back. So I raised them, Jude, Elijah, and Oliver, as if they were my own. I became Mama Nora. Not just Grandma. I attended school plays, sat through dentist visits, scraped together money for baseball camp, and stayed up nights when they had the flu. I didn't ask for praise. I didn't ask for anything. And then one morning 15 years later I got a letter. Madeline had hired a lawyer. She was demanding custody and filing criminal charges for kidnapping. The trial would be held in Bridgeport County Court in 2 weeks. I remember reading the words, then reading them again, hoping they would rearrange into something more rational. But they didn't. Now here I was, in court. Madeline sat there like a stranger, not a woman who'd once begged me to babysit while she cried in the bathroom for hours. Not the young mother who'd promised me, "I'll come back for them soon, I swear." Her lawyer stood and began to speak. My client suffered from severe postpartum depression and lacked adequate support. She left her children in a safe environment, yes, but she was never informed of the long-term plans made for them. She's now requesting the court return full custody of her 3 sons, and is pressing charges of custodial interference against Mrs. Alden. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. The judge, an older man named Harold Wilkes, looked at me with the kind of tired kindness that only people who've seen too much can manage. "Mrs. Alden," he said, "have you ever had formal guardianship over the children?" I nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I filed for temporary guardianship when they were 4, 6, and 7. When she didn't return within 2 years, I petitioned for legal guardianship. I have the documents." The lawyer cut in. "But she was not served proper notice. That undermines." "She moved without leaving a forwarding address," I said quietly. "I hired a private investigator to try and find her. Twice." Jude, Elijah, and Oliver sat behind me. Teenagers now. Broad-shouldered, serious-eyed. My boys. They didn't know what I was holding in my purse. The envelope. Inside were 15 years of photographs. Every birthday party. Every Halloween costume. Every one of Jude's report cards. Every permission slip for school trips. Every visit form listing me as the guardian. I'd carried it like a shield for over a decade. Judge Wilkes looked at me again. "Do you have anything else you'd like to submit?" I stood. My knees shook but my hands didn't. "Yes, Your Honor." I walked to the front and handed him the envelope. He opened it, pulled out the first photo and went silent. Jude's first day of 3rd grade. Elijah's science fair trophy. Oliver grinning with 2 missing teeth and cake on his face. And then the documents. My name over and over in the line that asked for parent/guardian. Not once did Madeline's name appear. Not once in 15 years. The courtroom was silent. But I knew this was just the beginning. Because Madeline wasn't here for reconciliation. She was here for something else. And I was about to find out exactly what that was. The moment the judge set the envelope aside, Madeline shifted in her seat. I saw her glance toward her lawyer, and for the first time, her perfectly calm expression cracked, just slightly. I had known her long enough to recognize what that meant. Something wasn't going according to her plan. "Mrs. Alden," Judge Wilkes said, folding his hands, "this is compelling documentation. However, the charges your daughter is bringing forward, particularly the accusation of kidnapping, are serious. Did you ever attempt to reach out to her after she left? I did, I said. Phone calls went unanswered. Mail was returned. I filed a missing persons report when she hadn't made contact for 6 months. I went through proper legal channels. Can you prove that? I nodded. The report is in that envelope, Your Honor. Dated and signed by Officer Benton from the Harrow County Sheriff's Department. Wilkes opened the folder again and found it. I saw the corner of his mouth tighten, not with frustration but with thought. Why now? He asked. Why is your daughter returning now after 15 years? That was the question no one wanted to answer out loud. So I did. Because the boys turn 18 soon, I said flatly. And their father's life insurance policy is about to pay out. A policy that lists Madeline as the original beneficiary. A murmur rippled through the room. Her lawyer stood abruptly. Objection, speculation. But the judge raised a hand. Sit down, counselor. I turned to look at my grandsons, my boys. Jude's jaw had clenched. Elijah looked at his shoes. Oliver's hands were curled into fists on his lap. They knew. They'd suspected. But now it was said out loud. She's not here for them, I said. She's here for what she thinks they're worth. Your Honor, Madeline's lawyer said again, more carefully this time, my client is ready to make a formal statement. The judge nodded. Proceed. Madeline stood. Slowly, dramatically. I made mistakes, she said, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. I had no support system. I was young, lost, dealing with depression and addiction. But I've worked hard to rebuild my life. I've gone through treatment. I'm sober now. I have a stable home in Portland and a career. I'm ready to reconnect with my sons. Reconnect. I whispered under my breath. You erased them. She continued. And I didn't know my mother had taken legal guardianship. I was never notified. If I had known, you wouldn't have left them with a bag of diapers and no note. I interrupted. The judge didn't scold me. He didn't have to. The silence did it for him. Madeline tried to hold on to the thread of sympathy she'd woven. I want a chance to be their mother again. The judge turned to the boys. Would you three be willing to speak privately with me in chambers? Jude stood first. Yes, Your Honor. Then Elijah. Then Oliver. They followed him through the double doors and disappeared. That was the longest 20 minutes of my life. When they returned, their faces were unreadable. Madeline was chewing on the corner of her lip, something she used to do when she was caught lying as a teenager. The judge cleared his throat. The court sees no evidence of kidnapping, he said plainly. Mrs. Alden acted within legal bounds. She followed proper procedure and documentation supports her claim. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath. However, he continued, there is merit to Ms. Franklin's request to reestablish contact with her sons. I'm issuing a supervised trial period 2 weeks. The boys will stay with their mother at her home. At the end of that period, they will have the right to choose whether they wish to pursue a relationship or return home. Home. That word hit hard, because for 15 years they had been mine. I gave a small nod, even though it felt like the floor had opened beneath me. Madeline was smiling. She thought she'd won. But I saw what she didn't, the hesitation in Elijah's step, the guarded look on Oliver's face, the flicker of regret in Jude's eyes. This wasn't over. And she had no idea what came next. The boys left for Portland the next morning. I stood in the driveway as they loaded their bags into the back of Madeline's SUV. She barely looked at me. Jude opened the passenger door, paused and turned back. We'll call you, Grandma, he said. I know, I said, forcing a smile. I made your favorite muffins. There's a bag in your backpack. Oliver hugged me. Elijah nodded. Then the car pulled away, leaving a hollow in the air so deep it rattled in my ribs. The house was quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that presses down like a weight. Their bedroom still smelled like them. Lemon shampoo, clean laundry, a faint trace of cologne. I didn't touch anything. Just walked the halls like a stranger in my own life. That evening I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chairs. The envelope Judge Wilkes had returned to me lay on the table. I should have put it away. But I couldn't. Felt like a shield I might still need. I reached for my phone. No missed calls. Not yet. I thought back to when Oliver had broken his arm at age 7. It was a schoolyard accident, monkey bars, poor timing, and too much bravery. Madeline hadn't answered the phone that day. Or the day after. The ER nurse had asked if I was his mother. I'd said yes. As I was. In every way that counted. 2 days passed. Then 3. On the 4th day Jude called. "She's different," he said cautiously. "Nice, I guess. But it's weird." "She's your mother," I said. "It's okay to feel strange. She bought us new clothes. Took us to a seafood restaurant last night. Introduced us to her boyfriend. They have this big house with a pool and a piano no one plays." I smiled softly. "Sounds like she's trying hard." "Too hard," he said. "She keeps saying things like, 'We'll make up for lost time,' but doesn't ask about our lives. Just tells stories we don't remember." "What about your brothers?" "Elijah's polite. Oliver's quiet. I think he's uncomfortable." "She loves you in her own way," I said. "She doesn't know us," he replied. And there it was. The truth he couldn't unsee. "I have to go," he added. "We're having dinner with her clients tonight." I hung up and sat in silence. That evening I found a letter on the porch. No stamp. Just folded paper tucked into the screen door. It was from Madeline. "Mom, you think you've won. You always do. But those boys are mine. You don't get to rewrite history just because I wasn't perfect. You poisoned them against me. And I won't let you keep doing it. You should have stepped aside years ago. M*****. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and slid it into the back of the envelope with the photos. Not because it hurt, but because it told me everything I needed to know. She didn't come back for them. She came back to win. The next day I met with my attorney. I wanted to make sure the life insurance couldn't be touched without my boy's consent. "I've been their guardian for 15 years, I said. "I know what she's after." Mr. Jensen flipped through the documents. "You're listed as legal guardian until their 18th birthdays. The funds can't be transferred without their signatures once they come of age." "Can she coerce them?" "Not legally," he said. "But people can be persuasive when money's involved." He paused. "Do they know about the policy?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "Then tell them," he said. "Soon." Back home I looked at the envelope again. 15 years of love, sacrifice, sleepless nights, and one woman's attempt to erase it with a single courtroom appearance. The 2-week trial period ended with no calls, no visits, and only 2 text messages. Both were from Jude. Both short. "We're okay. Talk soon." By the time the boys returned, something had changed. I saw it the second they stepped into the house. They looked older. Not in the physical sense, but like soldiers returning from a battlefield no one had warned them about. Elijah dropped his duffel bag in the hallway and sat on the couch without a word. Oliver didn't even take off his shoes. He just went straight to his room and shut the door. Jude lingered. He looked at me and I could tell he wanted to say something. Instead, he wrapped his arms around me tightly, like he had when he was 10 and had a nightmare about a house fire. "I missed home," he said into my shoulder. That evening I made their favorite dinner. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans with too much butter. Nobody said much. The silence was thick but not angry. More like they were still sorting through everything they'd seen and felt. I waited until after the dishes were done. "I need to tell you boys something," I said, pulling the envelope from the drawer. The kitchen light caught the edge of the photograph on top. Jude holding Elijah on his hip when he'd lost his first tooth. They sat down. No one moved. "There's a life insurance policy your father took out when you were babies," I said. "He named your mother as the beneficiary. But since I became your guardian, nothing could be paid until you turned 18. I let that sit for a moment. "She came back because of the money," Jude said. "It wasn't a question." "She may have convinced herself otherwise," I said. "But yes, I believe that's why she resurfaced." "She showed us the house she wants to buy," Elijah muttered. "Kept saying things like, 'This will be ours once everything comes through.' She already had furniture picked out," Oliver added from the hallway, his voice flat. "Bedroom sets for each of us. A dog." I turned toward him. He was leaning against the wall, arms folded. She asked us to sign some papers, he continued. Said it was just so she could open a savings account in our name, but I didn't trust it. Good, I said. Jude stopped me, Oliver said, nodding toward his older brother. I was about to sign. Jude looked uncomfortable with the praise. It didn't feel right. I exhaled slowly, gripping the table edge to stay grounded. I'm not telling you this to turn you against her, I said. You have the right to know everything. She's still your mother. She's not, Elijah said softly. We all turned to him. He hadn't spoken much since returning. She kept calling us her second chance, he said. Like we were a project she could fix. She bought us clothes and gifts and told us how much she's changed. But she never once asked me how I've been. Not once. She talked at us, not to us. No one replied. There was nothing to add. The room was quiet, except for the old refrigerator buzzing in the corner. I don't hate her, Elijah said. But I don't know her. And I don't think I want to. Later that night, I found a folded paper on my pillow. It was a letter. In Oliver's handwriting. Grandma, we didn't say it at dinner, but I want you to know, nothing she says can undo what you've done for us. You raised us. You stayed. She left. I don't care what happens with the money. I don't care about her big house or her new boyfriend or the promises she made while showing us pictures of pools and puppies. You're our home. We love you. I pressed the letter to my chest and wept. Not out of sadness but relief. Relief that I wasn't crazy. That I hadn't imagined the weight of every scraped knee I kissed. Every night I slept on the floor by their beds during fevers. 3 days after the boys came home, Madeline showed up at my door. Unannounced. No warning. I heard the knock and my heart dropped. Not out of fear but fury. I opened the door slowly and there she was. Sunglasses, silk scarf, perfect posture. The same look she wore when she left her babies behind on my porch 15 years ago. We need to talk, she said. I didn't step aside. Do we? She glanced around the porch. Can we go inside? I crossed my arms. If you've come to see the boys, they're at school. She gave a clipped nod and lowered her voice. Then let's keep this between us. I stepped back. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew I needed to hear whatever was coming next. She walked into the living room like she still knew the layout. Her eyes landed on the family photos along the mantel. Pictures of the boys at every stage. None of her. You kept them all, she said quietly. They're my family, I replied. She turned and got straight to the point. I want to be part of their lives. You've had them long enough. That sentence alone was enough to ignite something deep inside me, but I stayed calm. They're not property, Madeline. You don't get to reclaim them like a set of lost keys. She frowned. I'm their mother. You were, I corrected. Then you walked away. I was sick. You were absent, I snapped. Not just sick. Not just struggling. Absent. You didn't write. You didn't call. You missed every birthday. Every emergency. Every tear. I buried my husband and still showed up for them. You buried your responsibilities and disappeared. Madeline's composure slipped. I didn't come here to be judged. Then you came to the wrong house. She exhaled sharply. They'll come around. I'm their real mother. I stepped closer. And I'm the reason they're alive, educated, decent young men. You don't get to swoop in and rewrite history. Not because you regret it. And especially not because there's money involved. She flinched. That was it. The truth she hadn't expected me to say out loud. I know about the insurance, I said. I know you filed paperwork 6 months ago, trying to reclaim full rights before it matured. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said, do you really think they'll choose you over me if they believe I'm trying to reconnect? No, I said. I think they'll choose the person who never stopped choosing them. She picked up her purse. You think you've won. This isn't a contest. This is parenting. And I didn't do it to win. I did it because it was right. She headed for the door but paused before stepping out. They'll realize I'm their mother. One day. I let her have the last word. Not because she deserved it, but because it didn't matter anymore. She was losing something far more important than an argument. She was losing their trust. That evening, I told the boys she had come by. They didn't ask questions. No curiosity. No tension. Just quiet. Then Jude said something I'll never forget. "Let her try," he said. "She won't make it past a month." I frowned. "Why?" "Because she doesn't know how to stay," he said. That's when I realized. They'd already made their choice. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from a law office in Portland. I opened it at the kitchen table, the boys' laughter floating in from the backyard. They were fixing the old fence, Jude hammering, Elijah measuring, Oliver holding the board steady. It was a regular Saturday morning in our life, the kind we'd built over 15 years of small rituals and unshakable trust. The letter was simple, cold, formal. Madeline was withdrawing her custody petition. No explanation. No apology. Just a signature and a closing line. Miss Franklin reserves the right to reinitiate contact at a later date. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the back of the envelope with the others. Court documents, photos, school records, and the truth of our lives. The evidence of who stayed and who didn't. I didn't show the boys the letter. I didn't have to. They knew. The next week, Jude sat me down at the kitchen table and slid a form across to me. "What's this?" I asked. "Our power of attorney paperwork," he said. "We want you listed on everything. Medical, financial, legal." My throat tightened. "You don't have to." "We want to," he said. "All three of us." They'd already signed. All I had to do was add mine. "This isn't because we don't care about her," Elijah added. "It's because we do care. And we know who really showed up." Oliver smiled faintly. "We know where home is." That night, I stood at the kitchen window, tea in hand, and watched the porch light flicker on over the boys' old bikes. I thought of the day they arrived on my doorstep with cereal in their hair and fear in their eyes. I thought of every scraped knee, every fever, every school meeting I attended alone. And I thought of how they called me Mama Nora long before they even understood what that meant. I'd worried for years that I was a substitute. Now I knew I wasn't. I was the real thing. 3 days later, Jude brought home a letter from the insurance company. The funds were ready to be released. They sat around the table, reviewing the paperwork. "I want to donate some," Jude said, "to the shelter downtown." "Me too," Elijah added. "And maybe set up a scholarship." Oliver glanced at me. "And we're fixing up the house." I blinked. "You don't need to do that." "We want to," he said. "This place raised us." When they signed the final documents, Jude handed me a pen. "You sign it with us," he said. I did. The money didn't change anything. It only proved what I already knew. That love, given freely and consistently, matters more than blood, more than mistakes, more than time.